So I've been thoroughly testing the GoPro HERO 13 up against the DJI Action 5 Pro to help determine which features are better on each camera. Now with the newest camera, GoPro have also entered the realm of quick release. It's about time too, but I think they've really put a lot of time and research into this because it's pretty decent. Now, if we compare it to what you get with the DJI Action 5, the Action 5 is a plastic mount and there's flex in it. Also, you can only attach it one way. The GoPro, you can attach either way, it makes no difference, it still magnetizes and works and clips in exactly the same. Plus, it's fully metal, so there's no movement at all. So with the GoPro, as well as the new quick release system, you also have your screw hole and your folding down fingers, which is obviously even more secure than a quick release. To the DJI's credit, I'd say that you're less likely to accidentally press the side buttons on the DJI quick release. From this very first test, I had both cameras set in the same white balance. It's the widest field of view you can get for both cameras without any additional lenses. The GoPro is in 5.3K, obviously, and the DJI Action 5 in 4K. Another thing I notice is the choices that the camera's making. When I'm traveling in the shadow area, the sky is still exposed okay in the DJI, whereas on the GoPro, when I'm in the shaded area, it brings up the exposure of the area I'm in, which overexposes the sky. The DJI wasn't doing that. Now that's the automatic settings and that's the choices it's making. So when looking a bit closer at the footage, I noticed that there's a strange effect going on with the poles at the side on the DJI that don't seem to be occurring on the GoPro. So zooming in on this bridge footage, you can see in the DJI that the quality isn't quite as high, but it is a different resolution, of course. The clouds look a bit unusual. They look a bit HDR-like. They're not white like they should be. So the GoPro's showing the clouds as white. The DJI, they look a little bit bluey. So I decided to swap the standard lens on the GoPro for the new ultra-wide lens. The difference between the ultra-wide and the previous Max Lens Mod 2 for the GoPro is that it has a little blue thing on it that tells the camera what lens it is. It now automatically detects and changes to the correct mode and gives you the right settings. Now with the Max Lens or ultra-wide lens, you are limited to 4K now, but it is a wider field of view, so arguably it's a better comparison. So let's have a look. I've chosen to try out this new mode, the 1x1, so it's a square now. And to try and make things a bit fair, I've gone for the 4x3 on the DJI. And as you can see, more of the width, more of the height, which is really quite useful if you want to reframe in post-production. So another lens that we can now use on the GoPro 13 are the ND filters. You can manage the motion blur within the camera app, so it will help you get decent motion blur and balance that against the stabilization. The GoPro will tell you whether it recommends you go up or down in the ND range as well. And then there's a final lens I want to talk about, which is the new macro lens. Anyway, with this lens, as you can see, when things are closer to you, they're in focus. So if we look at the GoPro, which has the macro lens on and the focus is focused very close, or to the closest it can, the seat post and my legs as I cycle are in focus, and the scenery in the background is slightly out of focus. So it draws your attention to whatever's in focus. Whereas the DJI, you can see the seat post is clearly out of focus. The legs are sort of in and out of focus, but then the distance is in focus. Now, both these are artistic choices. Neither are correct or incorrect. It's kind of up to you. But it's really nice that you have this option with a GoPro. And of course, with the macro lens applied, you can rack focus to the distance too, but an additional purchase. So all of these lenses that you can get to improve your GoPro 13 and give you more options come with an extra cost. So that's something you need to bear in mind. Yes, you get these extra features and extra abilities, but you have to spend more to get them. So low light modes, This is where the DJI really tears ahead. The GoPro can have a high resolution at a cost of low light ability. And it's really evident. So I went to one of these twilight sort of candlelit concerts, and as you can see from this footage, these are the two cameras in their sort of standard video modes. And there's quite a weird color cast going on with the GoPro where it's just sort of struggling with the low light. And it's very mushy. It just doesn't look particularly good. Whereas the DJI, the colors look quite nice. It's actually quite an acceptable image. And this is just the standard mode. The DJI has a night mode as well. And this is what happened with the night mode. Now, it looks kind of artificial. It looks a bit strange in this setting because I think it struggled with the ambient light being given off by all these bulbs and lights that are in the frame. And there's kind of hard lines around everything. It looks a bit odd. There's definitely places where the low light mode on the DJI actually improve the image, and it's a bit of experimentation. But overall, definitely the DJI comes out on top with its low light ability. So looking at the slow-mo modes, 4K 120, which is the big one. In these shots running up the hill, color-wise, there's not a lot in it. I think they both look very similar color-wise. The DJI is sharper, and you can't de-sharpen it. So this is texture -2 and noise reduction -2, which is the lowest you can go on the DJI Action 5. And it's still slightly too sharp in my opinion, because I'd like it to be slightly softer so I can I'd rather add sharpness in post. So the GoPro has got a more pleasing image slightly, and you can add the sharpening after. So I would hope that maybe DJI could do something about that. Maybe they could give you even more ability to lower the sharpness. It's just a little nitpick because really both images are fairly similar. So the DJI just makes the clouds slightly bluish, whereas the GoPro there a bit more grey, whitey, which I think is probably a little bit more realistic. If we zoom in, when you're zooming in this close, you can actually see there are artifacts in the image. It's really nitpicky, again, because this is 4K 120, and so the bitrate is just being shared over more frames, and so it's always going to be a lower quality. But this is just a limitation of the DJI with its bitrate being a bit lower than previous cameras. Now, the upside of this is that it saves a lot of space. That's like a 25% saving. That is fairly significant. But in my opinion, I would like DJI to improve and increase that bitrate to more like it was with the previous Action camera. This is nitpicky because looking at the actual image, yes, I prefer the GoPro slightly because it's just slightly more pleasing because you can get that softer image. The DJI looks really good still, especially when it's moving. The GoPro can be 2.7K, 240, whereas the DJI has to drop to 1080p to do 240. Unless, of course, you're using this new slow-mo mode. So with this new slow-mo mode, you can add sort of artificial frames, if you will, between other frames when you're shooting 4K 120. Now, this has mixed results too, but it's a cool feature to have, and I'd say it's pretty good. Now, the GoPro has a burst slow-mo where you can shoot in 400 frames per second in 720p. Obviously, the resolution's lower, but they're all real frames, and it's a step in the right direction. We know that GoPro can be slower to sort of come out with new features, and this has been something that people have wanted for a long time, is these higher frame rates. So with the time-lapse features, it's a similar story as before. The DJI is just sharper out of the camera, even if you don't want it to be. It just looks a bit artificial. So if you look in the clouds look a bit strange on the DJI, a bit stranger. The GoPro gives you more of a blank slate of an image, whereas the DJI, you're kind of forced to have a certain level of sharpness, which looks good most of the time. So it's kind of potato. It's just like, based on your tastes. The GoPro also has the new magnetic charging system. So it essentially comes with a USB pass-through port that goes straight into the side of the GoPro camera. And it means that it's now waterproof. with that closed, and you can apply a charger straight there and it magnetizes on and charges up your camera. I suppose the question is, which one should you get? Now, I think if you've already bought into one system or the other, it's probably worth sticking with that system because they're both decent cameras for what they do. But if you want longer battery life, built-in memory, fast charging and low light ability, then the Osmo Action 5 is the way to go. If you want more control over the image, high resolution, more options with lenses and different things like that, and a better quick release, and also a more secure system for mounting your camera with the folding down fingers, it's definitely more secure than a quick release, then the GoPro is the way to go. There's a few things that are slightly disappointing about the GoPro. I would say that the touch screen is just not really good enough. It's a little bit finicky, whereas the DJI is solid. You know, it just works perfectly well. If I find that when I'm using the DJI screen, I go back to the GoPro and it just doesn't feel like responsive enough, and you have to press slightly harder and it's just not as good. And the few times where a camera's been mounted in a position where I can't really get to the screen, the DJI is super useful because you can use the front as the touchscreen too. It's difficult to recommend exactly which one is best because it really does depend on your needs. So let me know below what reasons you would choose one over the other, and we'll discuss further there in the comments. I'm going to be comparing these two cameras to the rumoured Ace Pro 2 as soon as that becomes available. So if you want to see that video as well, then definitely subscribe and be notified when that goes live. And as ever, I'll see you on the next one.